Chronic Hoosier joining us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
It's always a pleasure. We've reached that time of the year where now we just kind of sit back and see what happens, watch the Final Four play out, watch everybody hit the transfer portal, watch the people come in, and see what next year's basketball roster is going to look like. You got a lot to pack away. The women's team just finished a Sweet 16 run. Major League Baseball getting into play. The spring, you've got Little Five coming around, Indianapolis 500. So lots of things to look forward to and wait for.
Yeah, it's officially silly season. There's no doubt about it. This is kind of that wild part of the year, at least for teams that are done playing basketball. Even though we've still got precious few days left of the NCAA basketball season. The Hoosiers, like a lot of programs and players, have kind of moved on into the abyss of the portal season. So it's always wild and open up the Twitter every day just to see what's transpired since you last checked in. I think as we talked last week, I predicted that we'd probably get some news pretty quick. I'm not saying that was prophetic, but you know, lots of movement. Still waiting right now though to see what some of the core of Indiana's roster decides to do with their future plans, and that could very well take a little bit longer, as Trayce Jackson-Davis is probably going to have to go get some legitimate evaluations in order to make a really informed decision about what he wants to do. But we're also waiting to hear from from Race Thompson as far as what his plans are for next season, and then I think you'll probably see a roster that's largely cemented after that going forward.
If Trayce Jackson Davis were to decide to come back, does I, does that? Do you think that Race Thompson leaves? And if he doesn't come back, does Race Thompson come back? Is there what situation is it for Race Thompson to come back? I'm curious. I'm wondering.
I have zero idea. It probably depends on what his plans and goals are for the future. A guy in his situation, there's always the ability to not just return and get another season and hopefully improve your stock, but there's the opportunity to get an advanced degree. There's the opportunity to get some of that NIL money, which I believe IU is going to be in contention for when it comes to trying to attract and retain player services. And let's be frank, that's exactly what this is at this point. Teams are
Exactly.
going to be retaining player services, and there will be price tags involved. It's just a wild new world. So who knows? But so much of this is going to come down to what's Race Thompson want for himself. What does Race see himself doing in the next couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, and what decisions are going to put him on the best path to achieve those goals. So it's fascinating to see. I imagine that there's probably some interrelation between what Race decides and what Trayce decides. And I wouldn't even pretend to know which way that goes, if it makes him more or less favorable. But those guys are two known quantities to one another. They've seen what they're capable of, and it would certainly, I would imagine, impact one another's decisions as they contemplate what they want to do going forward.
I wonder if Mike wants to play Race and Trayce on the floor together at the same time. There's part of me that thinks that he wants more the 4 out, 1 in, and if they both
Yeah.
return, does that create a problematic situation where you're going to have to tell Race, hey, look, maybe you're going to have to back up Trayce this year, much like Travion Williams did with Zach Edey, or do you go into next year playing them both together and seeing, because you did play them both together last year. I mean, they were both productive in a way, but you also barely got into the NCAA tournament.
I don't think they had a choice but to play them both last year, Chronic. I mean, they from a talent level on the floor, you basically had to have them out there.
Yeah, I mean, we're still early enough in Woodson's tenure here where, as much as he has dreams for how he would like the offense to run and what style he wants to play, he's still cooking with a lot of predetermined ingredients, if you will. So you're going to have to whip up what's best with what you got. And obviously, that's going to be a primary focus as he heads into another recruiting cycle, both high school as well as transfers. Figuring out what type of players are going to best fit his vision for the program. But for the time being, Mike Woodson's still in a position where he very much is going to have to play whatever style his roster best affords him. And depending on which guys decide to come back, is probably going to lean pretty heavily on which direction that goes. But I do think there's something to be said for transitioning away from such a post-dominated offense, and trying to get a little more action going from your shooters, which he's clearly very interested in.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the difference in the product that's on the floor next year from already what's coming in from another point guard status, from a shooting status. It's just going to be interesting and fun to see the new dimensions that team has. So I'm looking forward to that. The Dane Fife situation, as I had talked earlier with Mike DeCourcy, it is what it is, but it's not something that can just be brushed under the rug. I mean, it has to be acknowledged and looked at and talked about, because it was probably one of the more shocking things that's happened to Indiana fans. I mean, that was a shocker.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable situation. A lot of HR matters are, quite frankly. Everybody starts every job with the best intentions, and everybody makes every hire with the best intentions. At the end of the day, it stirs a lot of emotion on both sides of the issue from what I've seen over the last week. This is Mike Woodson's team. This is Mike Woodson's staff, and at the end of the day, Mike Woodson and his staff are responsible for putting a product on the floor. Nobody else is going to be accountable for that more so than Mike Woodson. I mean, that's just the reality of being a head coach. I've seen a lot of stories about how the staff came to be assembled. I've seen a lot of stories about how things fell apart or just didn't work, rather. The one thing I know for certain, since I wasn't a party to any of these things, Mike Woodson's made pretty clear that he's going to keep internal business inside the locker room. And there's been a whole lot of rumor and innuendo on all sides of the matter. At the end of the day, I trust Mike Woodson made a decision he felt was best for his staff, and that's going to be his and his alone to be accountable for, because ultimately it's his butt in the sling if things don't go as planned. So it's unfortunate to see the way that it's kind of spilled out in the public. But at the end of the day, I think the parties that are going to be able to shine the most light on it, at least at this point, have chosen not to speak directly about it. And I would imagine that will probably remain the code going forward. So make of it all what you will. I'm content just to recognize that it didn't work out, and this is the direction Mike's decided to go. So history will tell exactly how that worked out for the program.
Kevin.
Yeah, I just think that, obviously it's his team. If there was something that he felt uncomfortable about with the chemistry of the staff, then you have to make the move, no matter how painful it is. But I think with Dane, it kind of hurts because he's a guy that was an Indiana guy, right? And he was a member of that 2002 Final Four team. He kind of, he came back from Michigan State to, get a chance to, return to his alma mater, and it didn't work out, and it ended in an unfortunate fashion. But we will see going forward, what Dane meant. I always had an inkling that Dane meant a lot to their defensive efficiency numbers, and it will be interesting to see next year how much he will be missed from that standpoint. Are they going to be the same level defensive team as they were this past season? Because, as you know, Dane at Indiana made his bones on defense, career leader in steals, probably a great teacher of defense, a great analyzer of defense. And I'm sure he added a lot of value to Mike Woodson's staff in his first year on that, and was somewhat responsible for the defensive numbers. How much, we'll see. And we'll see if Brian Walsh can step in and be the kind of guy that adds value to the staff, I think, the way Dane did his first year. But, they got to the NCAA tournament because of defense, and I have a feeling that, Dane's acumen in that area certainly played a role.
I mean, there's no doubt he's the most well-versed scout on that staff, or at least when it comes to institutional knowledge, both of the program as well as the conference. You know, it's going to be tough to replace a guy that's watched that much film of Big Ten teams, Indiana's included, and you know the insight he provided, being able to see it as an opposing coach. It's going to be tough to replace, and I think you're exactly right. It probably impacted IU's defense as much as anything. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes forward. But I think that the thing that should carry the engagement. You know, this was the first time in a while you saw a team that was really, really interested in engaging on the defensive side of the ball, and you got the sense they recognized how it rewarded them. So, you know, if that's a part of the culture that can carry over and transcend an assistant staff hire, Woodson's probably going to be in pretty good shape.